Today I am going to talk about the bedforms of supercritical flows in glacigenic settings. So this paper specifically references the upper flow regime bedforms of glacigenic settings from the Paleozoic and Quaternary. Now, these bedforms are most often documented in alluvial, coastal, shallow marine, and deep marine deposits, but they're also fairly common in glacigenic settings. The purpose of this paper is to show that these bedforms and settings can be used as signatures for the study of supercritical flows. So to begin talking about these bedforms, we have to understand their morphodynamics. Morphodynamics is sort of a loaded term that doesn't have a really strict definition, but from my understanding, it essentially is how a bedform's morphology affects its own hydrodynamics, which in turn affects the further development of its own morphology. What it really comes down to, though, is the hydrodynamics of different bedforms. The morphodynamics of these bedforms can be put into three categories: free surface flow, densimetric flow, and dimensionless flow. Densimetric flow is only really relevant when talking about subglacial systems, which is in the minority of environments that we'll be looking at. Dimensionless flow is used in theoretical settings, and it accounts for pressure and temperature differences, so it's basically the ideal parameters so that the stability diagram is as accurate as possible. Given that it's only useful in theoretical studies, we'll ignore it. As we already know, supercritical flows are characterized by inertial over gravitational forces with a Froude number greater than 1, so we can expect that high flow velocities will dictate the formation of these bedforms. Looking at the figure to the right, the upper flow regime bedforms that we are going to focus on are antidunes, chutes and pools, and cyclic steps. Antidunes are characterized by the migration of surface waves as either stationary, upstream, or downstream. They are also characterized by stability, which would be breaking or non-breaking. They tend to break when wave steepness exceeds a critical value, causing the destruction and reconstruction of the dune form. For non-breaking antidunes, you can expect to see tabular beds and backsets, as well as subhorizontal, sinusoidal, or low-angle cross-stratification. For breaking antidunes, you may see lenticular beds, backsets, low-angle foresets, or concave up concentric infills. Also to note that sinusoidal stratification usually implies a stationary antidune. And the more migration an antidune experienced, the more pronounced the backsets and foresets will be. Chutes and pools are generally irregularly spaced with a supercritical flow chute and a subcritical flow pool separated by a hydraulic jump. Sedimentary structures that you may associate with these bedforms are scour fills with steep backsets and concentric scour fills. So we're really just looking for those scour fills. Now this is an upper flow regime bedform that should be unfamiliar to you all. Cyclic steps look like sets of chutes and pools in the formation of steps. Looking at this figure, we can see that they're depositions and erosive flows bounded by hydraulic jumps with asymmetric bedforms. Since they're so similar to chute and pools, how do we distinguish the two in the geologic record? From what I found, a lot of it is up to interpretation, but certain depositional environments can be associated more with cyclic steps than chutes and pools, and vice versa. But what geologists look for in cyclic steps is asymmetrical backset cross-stratified scour fills and lateral stacking of those scour fills. Other upper flow regime bedforms you may see are upper stage, plain beds, humpback dunes, and supercritical dunes. These aren't the best to look at because they share the same characteristic sigmoidal foreset cross-stratification, which could also be associated with subcritical dunes. In general, these aren't the best to use for signatures of supercritical flows because they could all be mixed up. The depositional environments that we'll look at are glaciofluvial deposits, glacigenic deltas, and glacial lake outburst floods in the subaerial zone, and ice contact fans and density flow fans in the subaqueous. Now, this figure just shows you some of the bedforms you may expect to see in certain environments. Antidunes and chutes and pools tend to be found across all these environments, while cyclic steps are only seen in deltas and delta plains. These are lacquer peels from a glaciofluvial deposit. In image A and image B, we can see some subhorizontal stratification indicating antidune. Section 3 of image B has some scour fills indicating a breaking antidune. Here we have some glaciofluvial delta deposits. Image A shows some cyclic steps with scours filled by backsets. B is a little messy, but we can see some cross-stratified scour fills and sinusoidal stratification, indicating cyclic steps and antidunes. And C has some laterally stacked scours, which is associated with cyclic steps. These are deposits from a glacial lake outburst flood, which you would see in a glaciofluvial environment. Image A has some elongated scours filled by backsets, which is interpreted as cyclic steps. B has low-angle cross-stratified antidune deposits, and C has low-angle cross-sets, which also indicate antidunes. These are more deposits from a lake outburst flood. Image A has some stacked deposits of antidunes and chutes and pools. B has a steep-walled scour margin, which can be interpreted as chutes and pools. C is a closer look at some antidune deposits, and D appears to be structureless. This is a gravel-rich subaqueous ice contact fan. A has some scoured gravel that was deposited by a supercritical flow. B is just a close-up of this scoured gravel, and C shows some backset and foreset cross-stratified and sub-horizontally stratified gravel indicating either chutes and pools or breaking antidunes. This slide shows a sand-rich subaqueous ice contact fan. A shows some sinusoidally stratified antidune deposits separated by scours. B demonstrates a very nice concentric scour fill indicating a hydraulic jump from a chute and pool deposit. And C shows more sinusoidally stratified antidune deposits, while D shows a mixture of chutes and pools interbedded with antidunes. And conclusions. We can now see that upper flow regime bedforms are absolutely ubiquitous in glacigenic settings. We can also see that some bedforms like chutes and pools and cyclic steps are interchangeable and are often up to interpretation. We can also see that the deposits that we looked at are good signatures for high discharge events. These are my references. If anyone has any questions about my paper, you can email me and I would be glad to talk about it. Thank you.